Dom and his family are scheduled to be back on the big screen with a bang. With the newest additions in the form of Jason Momoa's androgynous villain, we're all excited yet sad to say goodbye to this beloved franchise. Today's video is for the Fast and Furious fans, as we all highlight what's in store for the penultimate film, Fast 10. So, let's get going. First up, the Fast and Furious franchise and their obsession with bringing new villains. Fast and Furious established a habit of bringing famous action stars to each installment, generally as antagonists. This ritual for the franchise started when The Rock came up as a bad guy in the Fast 5. Since then, the saga had Luke Evans in Fast and Furious 6, Jason and Jimin in Furious 7, and The Fate and the Furious had Charlize Theron. In the last installment, it was John Cena's turn to be the bad guy in F9. For the 10th installment, Jason Momoa has joined the cast, one of several new additions to the penultimate Fast and Furious film. The Aquaman star will play a villain in Fast 10, but one change must be made for Jason's role to work out. Although not much has been revealed about Jason Momoa's Fast 10 anti-hero, the Aquaman star defines him as extremely sadistic. The upcoming sequel will have a Bond-like villain, based on Momoa's comments on his Fast 10 role, which is a breath of fresh air for the fans. Next up, Jacob Toretto had the potential to be the main villain in F9. The character of Jacob Toretto in F9 was somewhat predictable. Jacob, a character who generated a massive Fast and Furious retcon concerning Dominic Toretto's life, was intended to be redeemed at the end of F9. Like The Rock's Hobbs in Fast 5, Jacob Toretto had the potential to steal the show as a one-off villain before joining Dominic Toretto's family. Cypher played a significant role in Jacob Toretto's timeline in F9. The interaction between the two villains was almost reminiscent of Cypher and Dom in the Fate of the Furious. Jacob Toretto, played by John, ended up feeling like a sidekick, a part of Cypher's schemes, given how Cypher and her first group were defiled in the Fate of the Furious. Making Jacob merely another one of Cypher's plots made the character appear less threatening. Working under Cypher had been redeemed in the end, limited Jacob Toretto's screen time as a fully realized villain acting solely on his own. Although Jacob Toretto is set to reappear in Fast 10, the conclusion of F9 reveals that Dom and Mia's brother has been redeemed. Both the bad guys suffered at the hands of the plot, which made them Cypher's pawns when they carry the potential to be more complex and threatening antagonists of the franchise. Moving on, Cypher has gotta go. Cypher, who first appeared as the antagonist in the Fate of the Furious and returned in F9, is set to be back for Fast 10. She will be the first Fast and Furious villain to reappear in 3 installments of the franchise consecutively, except for redeemed characters such as Hobbs. F9 indicated that Cypher's role in Fast and Furious has gotten boring, plus we barely saw any changes between her scheme in F9 and the one in the Fate of the Furious, making the latest sequel of the franchise feel repetitive, but we all have to agree that Jacob Toretto was the exception. Fast 10 must end Cypher's plot and focus on Momoa's plot as a villain, but Fast 10 can't simply dismiss Cypher because the character survived the events of F9 and still seeks vengeance on Dom Toretto and his brother. With Cypher's cyber threats plot establishing the tone for 2 Fast and Furious films in a row, it means that she shouldn't be the primary villain again. While we know that Fast and Furious can sometimes work with 2 prominent enemies, as seen in Furious 7, a recurrent villain will most likely dominate and overshadow a newly joined bad guy in the franchise. Fast 10 must feel grander than any early installment in the Fast and Furious franchise, and for that, the penultimate must have the plot with the original villain as the central figure for a bad bunch. Coming up, Fast 10 needs an original villain in the face of Jason Momoa to be a banger. Fast 10 will have to outdo the past installments and be the most ambitious film yet. Being the first of 2 films that will conclude the Fast and Furious franchise, the 10th installment budget is by far the highest in the saga. The next Fast and Furious sequel is expected to be on par in terms of scale with Marvel's biggest hits, Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. Set pieces and non-stop action can only take Fast and Furious so far, as flaws and plot holes in the Fate of the Furious and F9 have demonstrated. The franchise to end the curse of repetition requires a high-stakes, solid storyline with an original villain. Fast and Furious necessities are entirely a new type of villain after countless typical villains such as Cypher and Jacob Toretto, the bad guy who'd finally be a threat to Dominic Toretto and his family on multiple levels. Shaw in Furious 7 is the finest example, since he was always one step ahead of the Fast and Furious family. Jason Momoa's comments on his Fast 10 character are intriguing, and the DC movie star could turn out as a jackpot for the upcoming Fast and Furious films. The stakes for Fast and Furious 11 would be even higher if Momoa's character succeeds in Fast 10. hyping the audience for the last installment. Next, Jason Momoa gives the fans an insight into his Fast 10 role. Momoa will appear in the 10th movie of the Fast and Furious franchise, which will be released in theaters on May 19, 2023. Facing off against Dom and his Fast and Furious family is no joke, but Fast 10 has successfully found the actor to do it in the form of Jason Momoa, who will play the villain in the next sequel. In an interview with GQ, Momoa hinted at his character as the bad guy, saying, "I'm a peacock at the highest level," and disclosing that he will have purple and pink painted toenails and drive a lavender automobile. Interesting. The actor opened up to Variety, saying he's ecstatic to finally land a role as the rival side of the Good Guys Club. Momoa then spilled some tea that his character in the Fast 10 is a very sadistic, androgynous fella and a bit of a peacock. The Aquaman star revealed that the franchise's new villain has a lot of stuff going on and definitely has some daddy issues. The American actor also admitted that he had the time of his life working alongside the OG cast of the Fast and Furious, such as Vin Diesel, Michelle Rodriguez, Sung Kang, Ludacris, Jordana Brewster, Tyrese Gibson, and Natalie Emmanuel. He also mentioned the upcoming new characters and his co-stars Charlize Theron, Brie Larson, Rita Moreno, and rapper Cardi B. Talk about an ensemble. Following up, the Fast 10 villain needs to stay a villain. With Jason Momoa's Fast and Furious villain, Fast 10 will have an exciting storyline, but the franchise should avoid playing their old school trick for the future sequels. The Fast saga frequently casts A-list actors as villains in the franchise, ultimately redeemed into heroes in the end. The enemies become members of Dominic Toretto's family, from Jason Statham's Deckard Shaw to John Cena's Jacob Toretto, who turned out to be blood-related. The Fast and Furious villain trick ruins the franchise's future. The movie clashes become less relevant when every enemy joins the team family in the end. Deckard Shaw, for once, appeared to have murdered Han, played by Sung Kang in the film, only for Han to eventually return, making Shaw appear to not be so awful after all. Similarly, if Jason Momoa ends up being Team Dom in the future, it proves that he was never much of a villain in the first place. To keep fan-favorite characters on the screen, the Fast and Furious concept of villains becoming heroes makes sense. However, it has happened frequently enough that it's no longer surprising but pretty cringe. There's still a chance that Momoa's villain stays a villain. With the major plot of the franchise wrapping up in the next 2 installments, Momoa's villain may just run out of time to have his redemption time. Instead, he might even join forces with Charlize Theron's Cypher, who has played a villain in both The Fate of the Furious and F9. For the upcoming installments, the franchise must stop with the one big happy family storyline and let Jason Momoa's new villain stay as a villain for a change. Lastly, what's the plot of Fast 10? The story of the 10th installment has been kept under wraps. However, considering the track record of previous films, the possibility for Fast 10 appears limitless. The family has previously traveled into space. Who knows where they'll end up next? Some of what we know about the narrative comes from Vin Diesel, who plays Dominic Toretto and claims that the Fast 10 has a lot going on behind the surface. The plot may focus on Han, who uncovers himself to Deckard Shaw, who killed him. In the post-credit scene in F9, Han's reappearance and supposedly back from the dead for Shaw would leave him questioning everything. Han versus Shaw's face-off would be an essential part of Fast 10's plot. Given Charlize Theron's Instagram picture captioned "She's back, baby," we may reasonably guess that Fast 10's narrative will focus on her character Cypher. Cypher will certainly join forces with the series' newest sadistic villain, played by Jason Momoa. Another twist for the story would be the film to focus on Dominic and Brian's children, given that the franchise has always placed a strong emphasis on the notion of family. For now, all we can do is theorize and come up with various possibilities. But one thing's for sure, the anticipation of the fans is skyrocketing as we speak. You can watch the 10th installment of the Fast and Furious saga in the summer of 2023. That is a wrap for this video. Are you excited about Jason Momoa's entry as a villain in Fast 10? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. We'll see you in the next one.